Do you remember why I opened Bard? Because it's
What now?
I don't know. Bard is open on this laptop.
No,
On this,
of course it is.
I can't
I'm
remember
just
why.
glad someone's using it.
I should. You know what I should do? So, you know how you're not supposed to download things on the internet without I don't know,
Sure.
cursory glances at them.
Mm-hmm.
I've been downloading Python packages with no regard, just pip and then whatever, just going nuts with it. I am sure my computer's probably infected with malware or something.
Yeah,
Because here's what I'm doing. I'll go into ChatGPT or whatever. I need a Python script that does this. I'm just playing around or whatever. It's you need to download this package. I'm like, alrighty.
I need a Python script that will take my computer over remotely.
I'm just having fun. Okay, somebody's going to be like, Brad, give me an example that's realistic to everybody who's listening to this. Okay, go into ChatGPT, say, write a Python script that will download a YouTube video. It will do it, and it tells you to download some package or library, and you just install it. And I have no idea what I'm installing. I am my own worst enemy, per usual.
Well, I will say a Python script that does what you just described is probably no more or less dangerous than a download that will do the same thing, like a software
that is
application.
true. Instead of sketchy website where you drop the link in and then gives you an MP4
exactly.
that's...
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there was speaking of this, maybe this is why it's open, because it knew I was coming to say this. There was a Google memo that leaked. I can't remember who got it, which source, but basically Google came out and said, look, we have no moat, and moat being how hard it is to copy what we do, around AI, and nor does OpenAI. Actually, the moats are these language models that are being open sourced, and so it's just a race, and it's a really big threat to Google, is the TLDR.
Yeah, I think part of that memo said something to the tune of, we basically don't have anything to differentiate what we're doing from anyone else. I mean, except for one thing, they have Google search, right, which is a solid backbone on which to kind of build this type of thing. But yeah, I mean, this is the argument I've made about Microsoft. They got out early. They got the marketing win right at the beginning. A little controversy there, but whatever. And but they don't have exclusive access to anything that's important. I mean, so yeah, I will see. I don't know. I guess you could draw a parallel here to just general software platforms like operating systems and so forth. Did open source win the world? Some people would argue, yeah. I mean, because of Android is sort of Linux and sort of open, and I would argue, no, not really.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, the reality is that it's a mix, that the world is heterogeneous, genius, whatever the word is. And I think this will be too. I think there's going to be a mix of things. And you can, people can choose based on their needs and wants and whatever.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, that example I just cited, saved me probably 4 or 5 searches, because the first thing you'd have to do is what Python package can I use to download a video? And then you would search it in Google, it would give you a list of results.
I'm fascinated that you've gone in a Python direction, but yeah, I think
there's logic to that. The logic is that Python is what I'm most familiar with. I used to use it.
Oh, okay.
I used it in graduate school for math and data analytics.
I mean, as opposed to, in other words, the idea is that these things are really good at creating software code. So you go to a software code solution or whatever, and you happen to know Python. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
And it's more just trying to self-educate, if you will. How can you use these tools? How can you effectively manage them, sort of thing?
Sure. I mean, with the understanding that software development as a hobby/career is probably going away in about 3 months. I've spent a lot of the past, many years trying to learn programming and different languages and frameworks and blah, 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 whatever, and have spent a lot of time researching topics on the web, and you end up at places like Stack Overflow and whatever. And I wouldn't say that was time wasted or whatever, but I do like the idea of being able to ask a question and get an answer. I know that's it sounds so obvious and stupid to even say out loud, but a lot of Google searching or just searching is a follow the breadcrumbs kind of a thing, where you have to, as a person, evaluate the quality of things and go in and out because you have a very specific need that isn't answered by that question. I think we run into this every single day. I just I'm evaluating this Pixel Watch thing, which doesn't fit my friggin' huge wrist. And I somehow entered the pin wrong twice when I set it up. So I went to enter the PIN and it was error, error, error. And then it made me wait 28 seconds. And I was like, oh God. So first I had to figure out, well, first I searched like, how do I change that? Right. You have to be able to get into it to change it. Like, okay. So then I'm like, well, my big gorilla fingers. So what might I have tapped around the PIN that I normally use? And I finally figured it out. I figured out the wrong PIN, but what I just described is it's not like I spent days on it, but I mean, I just want the answer and I want to move on. I want to get moving here, So I mean, maybe this is that alone is a step, it's a good way forward if it is right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think I don't think anyone questions things. We do these things and we're like, look, if you're going to spend 3 weeks in Europe, you should maybe buy some books and watch some videos and read some websites and do some research. Absolutely. But if you're just trying to get on to the next thing, don't you just want the answer?
Yeah, so one of the there's a lot of interesting things. I'm not familiar with this company, but apparently it's big. It's called, I think, Chegg, like Chegg, and it's I think it's like a student like study portal, like homework assignment thing, and they're like student teacher, or I don't know, whatever. But it's just
literally just looked at this for exactly the same reason as you're about to describe.
GPT has just wrecked their business because. Yeah.
And they
you can just go to GPT and be like, here's my math problem. Explain to me how this is done. And it quite literally will explain and walk you through word problems. It's fantastic for that.
So here's the debate on this, because depending on your, I don't know, ideological bent, maybe you may feel differently. In other words, this is actually, it's like the Family Guy routine, the positive and the negative, right?
Yeah.
Which one do you see? Do you see the positive of someone being able to get the answer they need in a much more frictionless and probably cost-effective way? Or do you see the loss of jobs and the loss of a business? Right. And do you because both of them are true. And what's the net benefit? Do we mourn the loss of cars or horses and carriages as a transportation source because the car was invented? I don't know. I mean, but every single time something like this happens, that's going to be the debate. And that's, I think, unfortunately, or whatever, is the story of technology in all of its forms. It's not just a benefit, but do the benefits outweigh the negatives?
I see both sides of it because I feel that AI and where we are headed is only consolidating more power within the few select companies who have the capacity to build up models and do everything.
One of the negatives. Yep.
Right. And that is a very scary thought that Microsoft has just probably found its next continuance for the next 50 years. Well, maybe 50 years, but like its next thing that's going to keep it alive for the next 15, 20 years.
And it's also found the way it's going to be a freaking dick for the next whatever number of years. Exactly. Because I have spent the past, 10 years arguing to anyone, because you meet this resistance out in the world. I'll never use that because it's Microsoft. What's the problem with Microsoft? I don't like what they did in the 90s. It's like, guys, geez, get over it. Like, it's a different company now. But is it?
Yeah, I was about to say, the past 12 months makes me feel like,
Well, I mean, in the sense that do people really change, or are they always the same little dark individual that they really are?
Yeah.
Or, can companies change? I don't know. I mean, I don't know literally, but we have the news this week that Microsoft is going to force people who use Outlook, but I don't know if they mean the new Outlook or every Outlook. I don't know. And Teams to, when people click on links, web links, it's going to open an Edge no matter which browser you chose. And it's like, didn't we fight this battle? And look, they did it in Windows 11. They're going to do it in these applications. I mean, when does it end? The answer is probably never. This is another slippery slope example. But more problematically, this is Microsoft behaving in the same, I don't know, protecting a monopoly thing. Even though, we can argue monopoly, whatever, but protecting or trying to advance a platform through bundling or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they also look at it too they say, where is the regulatory, the governmental pressure coming from? It's coming for app stores. It's coming for privacy. Apparently it's coming for cloud gaming potentially. That's where it's not coming for anymore, Paul, threat from Microsoft? Browsers. Yeah. So why not get stupidly aggressive while Google's back on its heels trying to figure out AI and start snipping away more of their Chrome market share?
Yeah. Two things. You're right. And then two thoughts come to mind. I think I voiced one of these yesterday, but I might have voiced both of them sometime this week. I don't know. Edge does have an incredibly minority market share for one thing. And the one, I wrote a story earlier this week, trying to explain how Safari and Edge both have the same usage share. Safari can only be this is on the desktop, can only be installed on computers that are Macs. That it's 1/4 or 1/8 or 1/10 or whatever of the business, and they still have the same usage share. So that's interesting. Both of those guys are doing what they can to leverage their, platforms, whatever. But the other one is just about, I don't know, intent and behavior and ethics and whatever. And it's just, if you can't trust someone when no one is looking, then you can't trust that person.
Right.
Right. In other words, if they talk big about privacy and how much they care about everything, but when our backs are turned, they're stealing money from our pocket or, whatever the analogy is, it doesn't matter. Those people are not trustworthy. And that's true of companies too, right? We have to make our decisions individually about which products and services and companies we back, et cetera. But this kind of behavior chips away at trust. And I think it's a huge ethical failure on Microsoft's part. And it's bad business. It's just bad business. If you don't want to take ethics out of it, it's bad business. This is not good for Microsoft. It's not good for Microsoft's customers. It's not good for Microsoft shareholders. It's stupid. It's just bad.
We'll see. We'll see. There's a lot going on. They also announced that they're updating the recommendation setting or recommendation content in the start menu because whatever. And then they're putting, I think you can now get websites will eventually start showing up in there. So
you're already doing this, but I'll just add to your marketing materials for Stardock that another item on the bullet list is yet another thing we'll never do in Start 11.
Yeah.
That list is so long, no one's going to read it all now. So who cares? But it's, that's another example of this terrible behavior. And I don't know, there's levels of things that you can do that's terrible as a company. And there's levels of things you can do to kind of obviate that, right? So if you say Microsoft as a company has to do something like this for some reason, okay, whatever. Let me turn it off. That's the first level. And the second one is respect my setting.
Yes,
and keep doing that thing. Don't keep asking me. And don't, when I go to a different computer, just redo the thing you were doing before. These are not technologically challenging problems, but they choose not to do them. And yet another example of them just being terrible. And it's just, I keep coming back to it and it's getting frustrating. And I'm not quite at the level of like 1999, Paul, where I was like, break this company up and scatter its remains to the winds was literally my opinion of this company. But it is becoming a big problem. And it's a slap in the face because we thought they were better than this.
Yeah. Or that was behind us. Or behind them.
Yes,
but
that's right. It would be, I always use this horrible example. It's like saying I'm never going to go to Germany because, World War II. And it's like, guys, that was like 75 years ago. You got to get over this. But I could be wrong. It's like riding a bike. I don't know. What is it? I don't know. What goes around comes around. It's back in fashion. What are we talking about? I don't know. I'm struggling with this, Brad.
Well, you got the weekend to think it over.
Yes, I'll obsess.